He was stabbed, poisoned, shot and drowned. Yet none of it worked. This isn't a legend. It is just a story about a peasant who bewitched a royal empire and helped ignite a revolution. This is the story of Rasputin. He came from the frozen heart of Siberia, illiterate and unwashed. He came claiming divine visions. And within a few short years, he was rubbing shoulders with emperors, dictating political appointments, and influencing the fate of a nation on the brink of collapse. But who was Rasputin really? A healer, a devil, or a conman? This video dives deep into the rise and fall of Grigori Rasputin, the most dangerous man in Russia who simply refused to die. And once you learn the truth behind his murder, you'll never see the Russian Revolution the same way again. Let's begin. Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin was born in 1869 in a small Siberian village. He was surrounded by frozen forests and the isolation of a peasant life. His father was a local farmer and mail courier. The family was religious, poor, and far removed from the sophistication of urban Russia, a classic lifestyle of a Siberian village. Like most of the population of that village at that time, Grigori had no formal education, rarely bathed, and showed no early signs of greatness, except maybe one sign. He was quite different. Locals began to notice odd behavior. Rasputin was reportedly able to read souls, predict events, and heal animals. After a string of petty crimes and run-ins with the law, he experienced a religious awakening. Rasputin left his wife and children behind and took to the road as a wandering mystic, seeking spiritual enlightenment. His journey took him to monasteries and shrines across Russia and beyond. He was deeply influenced by the Celestists, a fringe sect of Orthodox Christianity that believed true closeness to God came from intense sin, followed by deep repentance. Apparently, that meant drunken orgies, wild rituals, and deep anguished prayer. Rasputin never officially joined the sect, but their ideas shaped his twisted view of salvation. By the early 1900s, Rasputin had returned home, entirely changed. Now, sporting a wild beard, hypnotic eyes, and a burning sense of purpose, he began preaching. And word spread quickly. This holy man had powers. He quickly began to gain followers and, more importantly, connections. In 1903, Rasputin made his way to St. Petersburg, the imperial capital of Russia. It's important to note that the Orthodox Church and aristocracy were obsessed with mysticism and the occult. Hence, Rasputin's arrival came at the perfect time. Despite his foul smell, filthy robes, and unkempt hair, he possessed something few could ignore: an uncanny charm and a penetrating gaze that people claimed could look directly into your soul. Within a few years, Rasputin was mingling with bishops, noblemen, and eventually royalty. By 1905, he was introduced to Tsar Nicholas II and his wife Tsarina Alexandra. This would be the most consequential meeting of his life. Nicholas and Alexandra had one burning worry: their only son and heir, Alexei. He had hemophilia, a deadly disease that caused unstoppable internal bleeding. Every time the boy got a bruise or cut, his life was at risk. The royal doctors were helpless. And that's when Rasputin stepped in. After being called to the palace during one of Alexei's bleeding episodes, Rasputin prayed, spoke softly to the child, and then left. Miraculously, Alexei began to recover. The Tsarina was convinced Rasputin had divine healing powers. And from that moment on, Rasputin was not just a guest. He was part of the royal family. His bond with the Tsarina deepened. She called him our friend and trusted his advice over that of general, ministers, and even her own husband, the Tsar himself. Of course, Rasputin exploited this influence. He positioned himself as a spiritual guide and involved himself in matters of state. While Rasputin was healing royals, he was also building a reputation for debauchery. His spiritual philosophy blurred the line between sin and salvation. He drank heavily and slept with noble women and prostitutes alike. He was seen by many as a dangerous fraud. But the more outrageous his behavior, the tighter his grip on the royal family became. Even as scandals swirled, rumors of seduction, orgies, blackmail, Alexandra defended him. She wholeheartedly believed that Rasputin was keeping her son alive. However, to his critics, Rasputin wasn't a mystic, he wasn't a healer, and he wasn't of divinity. He was a parasite infecting the heart of the monarchy. But no one outside of the royal family was able to challenge him. After all, he was backed by the Tsarina herself. And then came World War I. In 1915, Tsar Nicholas Romanov left the capital to lead the Russian army, leaving his wife Alexandra in charge. In reality, Rasputin began calling the shots. Ministers were appointed and dismissed at his suggestion. Enemies were exiled, allies were rewarded, and the Russian people were outraged. Food was scarce, soldiers were dying. And back in Petrograd, they saw a stinking monk pulling the strings. Rasputin has become the symbol of a rotten empire. Cartoons depicted him as a puppet master with the Tsar and the Tsarina dangling from his fingers. His presence in the palace was seen as a national threat. Calls for his removal or death grew louder. By late 1916, Russia was a ticking time bomb. Revolutionaries plotted in secret. Soldiers mutinied. The Romanovs were blind to the storm coming their way, thanks in large part to Rasputin's delusional reassurances. And now, behind closed doors, a group of nobles decided enough was enough. They murdered to assassinate Rasputin, and in doing so, they believed they would save the empire. The leader of the conspiracy was Prince Felix Yusupov, Russia's richest man and husband of the Tsar's niece. Alongside Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich and several others, Prince Felix hatched a plan that would become one of the most infamous assassinations in history. On the night of December 29 of the year 1916, Rasputin was invited to Felix's palace under the pretense of meeting the prince's wife. In the basement, they laid out cakes and wine. How hospitable, right? Not really, no. You see, they were laced with enough cyanide to kill several men. Rasputin happily ate the cakes, drank the wine. But nothing happened. The prince was stunned, shocked. He panicked. He grabbed a revolver and shot Rasputin right in the chest. And the stinking monk collapsed. Hours passed. The conspirators celebrated. They considered this a successful assassination. But when the prince returned to check the body, Rasputin's eyes flew open. According to Felix's own account, Rasputin lunged at him, screamed, and staggered up the stairs trying to escape. They shot him again and again. Still, he moved. Finally, they bound him, beat him, and dumped his body into the frozen Neva River. When his body was later recovered, Rasputin's lungs were filled with water, meaning he was still breathing when he hit the water. Even in his death, Rasputin was a legend. By killing the monk, the conspirators thought they had saved Russia. But they were too late. Less than 3 months later, the Romanov dynasty collapsed. The February Revolution swept through St. Petersburg. The Tsar was forced to abdicate. The royal family was imprisoned and eventually executed. Far from saving the empire, Rasputin's end only marked the beginning of the end. The prophecy he had reportedly giving the Tsarina came true. He prophesied, "If I am killed by common men, you and your children will rule Russia for centuries. If I am killed by nobles, you and your family will not survive. In killing Rasputin, the aristocracy may have sealed their own fate. Rasputin's life is one of history's most bizarre and haunting stories. The frozen backwaters of Siberia to the heart of imperial power, manipulating kings and queens, healing princesses, and stirring panic in the hearts of an entire nation. To some, he was a visionary, a misunderstood holy man. To others, a monstrous fraud who seduced an empire into ruin. But no matter what you believe, one thing is undeniable. Rasputin changed the course of Russian history. Not with a sword, not with a crown, but with whispers, prayers, and a refusal to die. If you are interested in powerful Russian characters, check out this video of Vladimir Putin. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell.